I'm looking forward to having this conversation because I guess I haven't met anybody who is here in Korea and spent time in Luxembourg, right?
Right,
You
yeah.
spent some of your formative years in
I
Luxembourg.
did, yeah.
And also the people that I have learned the most from, just in terms of like the Cambridge experience, are people that have had extended periods abroad, like
Right.
mostly I would say like Western types of culture,
Right. Yeah.
and then are working here. And you have operated in like K-pop industry and are currently doing that.
Right.
And that is a whole side of Korean culture that I don't know much about still. The last time we had a chat, I learned a lot just from listening to you.
Right.
So I'm excited to kind of delve into that as well.
Yeah.
But in terms of brief introduction of what you do professionally and a little bit about your like Korean heritage and background,
Right.
could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me here. I
course.
mean, couple of conversations that we had really, striked me as just really fun conversations, and having to be able to share my story to not just you, but everyone who follows Cambridge is such an exciting opportunity for me. And I describe myself as a Korean international, so not putting a specific country behind the Korean. And that mainly comes from my background, which is that I was born in Korea, but I've lived here and there. So when I was 5, my dad's job required us to go to Sri Lanka, Colombo, the capital city. And for there we stayed for maybe a year and a half.
Okay.
Then I moved back to Korea, attended Korean elementary school. And right as I was about to start learning about rhombuses and all those shapes,
Yeah.
our family moved to Milan, Italy.
Wow.
And there we lived for 2 years.
Huh.
Yeah. And I think I was still in elementary school back then.
Okay.
And then our dad's job required us to move to Luxembourg. And when my dad first told me, okay, everyone, we're moving to Luxembourg, I had to literally Google and see where that was. I had no idea where that was. Like, is that in Asia? Is that in the Middle East? And turns out it wasn't too far from Milan. So yeah, our family got on a plane, moved to Luxembourg, and lived here for 8 years.
Wow. 8
Yeah,
years.
8 years.
And can you tell me a little bit about Luxembourg? Like, as you mentioned, you said you had to Google it. I think
Yeah.
when I first heard, like, I know Luxembourg is in Europe.
Yeah.
And when we did like European geography in like middle school or
yeah.
something like that, I remember the name coming up a number of times.
Right.
But I don't know much about the country. So when you talk to like other Korean people and share a little bit about your background,
Right.
what do you usually say in terms of Luxembourg? And this
Actually,
background?
funnily enough, thank God, there is this rock band called Crying Nut. And one of their most known songs is called Luxembourg. Maybe not the title, but the main lyrics is Luxembourg. So their thing was finding 2 countries with 5 syllables. So one was Argentina, the other was Luxembourg. So the song goes Luxembourg, Argentina. So everyone knew that Luxembourg as a country existed thanks to that song. So what I tell my friends for decades now, well, maybe not decades, 10 plus years, is that the Luxembourgish Ministry of Foreign Ministry should give that rock band a medal for increasing awareness of the country in Korea.
Yeah.
But other than that, Luxembourg is a landlocked country. It's a very, very small country. Bigger than Seoul, I think, but not that much bigger, I think, with only 600K people living there. Over half of them being foreign nationals, like me and my family used to be. It's between France, Germany, and Belgium. And it's in this area called the Schengen area, where free movement of people and goods is allowed. So our family would always, get on the car, go to Germany, drive 30 minutes, cross the border with no border control, buy groceries because it's cheaper in Germany, and then get on the car again, go to France because we wanted some Korean snacks or food. Because the nearest Korean market would be in France or Germany. And then when my parents wanted to vote as Korean national citizens, they would go to Belgium because Luxembourg didn't have any 대사관 for Korean nationals. So it was together with Belgium.
Huh. Wow. Very interesting.
Very, yeah.
And so you were there, you said, for 8 years? Is that right?
8 or 9 years, yeah.
Okay.
Something around that.
And like, I guess in terms of what you do now, you're here in Korea working. Can you share a little bit about your professional background as well?
Yeah, so after graduating high school from Luxembourg, I moved to Korea, attended Yonsei University, which I think you had a lot of my people, some people I know. Like
Yes.
you've met up with Posong yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I happen to know Posong as well.
Ah,
so
cool.
It's a very small world. Attended Yonsei University, and I started my first job at Kakao page, which was the webtoon and web novels part of the Kakao kind of, I guess, kingdom. Which later, after some mergers and acquisitions, turned into Kakao Entertainment. And there I spent 4 years of my first career years. And last year, when it marked, I think, my 4 year and maybe three months in, I jumped ship, moved to a Series D startup called MAKESTAR. And right now, I'm the Global Business Development Manager for all of North America and Europe.
Wow. It seems like these types of roles, like these global business development types of roles, are perfect for people with your type of background or profile, right? I'm curious about your connection to Korea, like when you were in Luxembourg and when you were in Italy and when you were in Sri Lanka, right? Like, would you come back regularly throughout your childhood, and do you feel quite connected to the country even when you were abroad?
Right. So back in Sri Lanka, I don't really have much memory of it because maybe I was 4 or 5. The only memories I have is like, picking flowers and like trying to eat honey from it. And we had a driver and he would teach us like how to do that. And it was a very short stay, both in Sri Lanka and Milan. It was less than 2 years. So our family just stayed there without coming back for summer. But from Luxembourg, my dad, in retrospect, tells us that it was actually cheaper to have us, of course, in Europe, just spend the summer there. A trip to Paris, for example, is just like a 4 or 5 hour drive. So like just taking us to Disneyland, for example, in Paris would be cheaper than sending us back to Korea. But then he thought it was good for, our education and staying connected with our heritage to send all of me and my sisters. I'm a big family, so it must have been a huge investment for him. He sent us back every summer. So we would, camp at our aunt's house in Daejeon or stay with our grandma in Seoul. So every summer for 8 years, I would be back in Korea for more than 2 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And were there other like international Korean types of profiles in Luxembourg while you were there that you guys knew of or were connected to, or not really?
Actually, Luxembourg is such a fascinating country in that there was little to no Korean population. From what I hear from the elderlies, the seniors who've been there for decades, there used to be a big Korean population before IMF, especially Korean banks. That's what I heard. But then IMF happened and many of the families had to return. And when I was living in Luxembourg, which was, I think, between 2007 and 2015, there were less than 100 Korean people living there.
Wow.
It's very small, which compared to, for example, Milan, which I don't really know the actual Korean population in numbers, but there were 2 Korean churches, humongous, and one Korean 성당. So the Korean population there was really big with a Korean school during the weekends, hundreds of kids would be there, and I would also be one of them. So having experienced that kind of culture, Korean kind of pop community back in Milan, and moving to Luxembourg where there was literally nothing but just one church with maybe 30 people was a huge shift for me.
Wow. Yeah. And your I guess life or upbringing is kind of unusual on multiple fronts because, as you alluded to, you also have a big family.
I do, yeah.
You're one of, is it 5?
I'm one of 5.
Okay. And you're the eldest, or?
I'm the second eldest, but me and my sisters, there's only 1 year age gap. So.
Okay. And when you were in Luxembourg, it was your middle school years and your high school years for the most part?
Yes, for the most part, yeah.
And the types of education that you got and your peers, they were also international backgrounds as well? Yes.
So for all the countries that I've mentioned, Sri Lanka, Milan, and Luxembourg, I was lucky and blessed enough to attend international schools. So I think maybe ironically, that's why I was able to stick onto my Korean heritage so much, because I was always the one representing Korea in front of all these kids from all across the world. And the thing about international schools is that they value that kind of heritage, and they want the students to feel proud of where they're from. So they would always host things like international days, international luncheons, where all the kids would come dressed in their
some sort of cultural attire.
Like traditional attire, which was hanbok for me, and bring food, like traditional food, prepped at home, which was mostly like kimbap, mandu, and japchae for me and my sister, and put that all across like one of the biggest halls that the school would have, like even the gym, and call all the parents, all the friends, all the family, and it would just be like a hustling and bustling, just festival for everyone to enjoy, and that was the norm. I remember having that, maybe not in Sri Lanka, because I don't remember much, but I remember having that in Milan, being very proud of my hanbok, because it's, in my eyes, they were the prettiest out of all the traditional attires. Yeah. And also in Luxembourg. So, I think the international school aspect definitely played a part. Yeah.
And when you say, like, it's interesting when I talk to Korean Americans, let's say, because even their backgrounds are quite different. And the individuals who choose to identify as Korean American, in terms of time spent abroad and time spent in Korea, I can have two people that have spent equivalent pieces of their life, either abroad or in Korea. And some of them will choose to identify themselves as Korean American, and others will choose just to identify themselves as like Korean, right?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So American is not an option? It's just Korean American or Korean?
Well, I guess American is certainly an option as well. But it's interesting for example, like I interviewed somebody and he was born in the States and then he came to Korea pretty early on in his childhood, like 4 or 5 years old, and then spent most of his formative years in Korea. He was going to, let's say, like an international school in Korea, but basically like the entirety of his life he was spent in Korea, had perfect Korean, and then would like go to military service or something like that, right? But he would still identify himself as like Korean American, despite the fact that he had spent like such extended periods of time living in Korea, which was a little bit surprising to me as somebody who's just like very Korean American in the sense that born and raised in the US my entire life, right? For you, and as you compare like your siblings' experience as well, do you think that they have similar way in which they identify themselves or express themselves in terms of how international their background is versus how like Korean their identity is?
So it comes in a spectrum, and I think among all my siblings, among the 5 of us, I'm the one that would identify as a Korean international. Maybe my older sister. It's just the 2 of us, and the rest of my 3 younger siblings, I think they would just identify as fully 100% Korean. And this might be because me and my older sister, we spent our formative years in Europe, and we remember most of it or all of it, whereas our siblings, and there's a huge age gap between all of us, were very small. I think the eldest out of the 3 siblings, younger siblings, was in maybe like the 2nd grade when we moved back to Korea, 3rd grade. So they don't really remember much of it. They only remember like happy memories of, running down the garden and, picking grass and eating it and getting scolded for that.
That makes sense.
But regarding your other point about, how some people with similar backgrounds identify as different kind of, Korean American or Korean.
Yes.
I think the household plays a really, really big part in that, because my parents are Koreans, and as we were growing up, we would eat Korean food, we would read Korean books. And my dad is a huge bookworm, and he would order books from Korea to Europe every year. It was like an annual thing. So he would always sit us in front of the computer, and he's like, put in whatever book you want. And I think it was like Yes24 or 교보문고, the website. And me and my sister, we'd be like, yay, and just put in whatever books, like comic books, novels, non-fictions, whatever. And so the Korean aspect was just all around. Like we spoke, ate, read in Korean. And my parents really did emphasize that we were Koreans. So we always went to Korean schools in Milan and also in Luxembourg. And even when my youngest siblings, both of them were born in Luxembourg, but I don't think my parents ever looked into like getting Luxembourgish passports or nationalities for either of them, because I think in their minds, we're Korean and we're going to go back to Korea, so like there's no need.
Wow. And when you came back to Korea for like college years, and then like afterwards, your early professional years, do you still have like roots or connections to Luxembourg, and would you make trips back regularly?
I did, yeah. I mean, the thing that I missed most about Luxembourg is, I guess it formed me as who I am today. So all my happiest memories, 90% of them are based in Luxembourg. So when I think of Luxembourg, it's like home. It's, I would, if I had the chance to go back right now and work there, I think I would seriously consider it.
Wow.
Yeah. Although I would want to like raise a family there like my parents did. But it wasn't like a sense of, I think it's more of a sense of nostalgia than, I have to go back. Like Korea is not where I belong. It wasn't really that. So I would make myself, I would put myself in a position where I would get the opportunities to get trips to Europe sponsored, by the school or by some foundation, which I did. So I think I moved back in 2015, started Yonsei in 2016, and I got a trip subsidized to Europe for some like research purposes in 2018 with a couple of other friends.
Nice.
And then I went to, of course, visit Luxembourg and catched up with my friends and then moved back. I think that's it. So I went to Luxembourg once during my entirety of college years.
From a language perspective, Luxembourg, like I guess like the working operating language is English, or?
No, it's not. There's actually 3 official languages: Luxembourgish, French, and German. It's fascinating because if you just go to town and go to a cafe and order, a cup of coffee, whoever's taking your order would switch their language based on what your greeting was. So if you say bonjour, then they would take your order in French. If you say moyen, which is good morning in Luxembourgish, they would switch Luxembourgish. Guten Morgen for German, and hello in English. Yeah, good morning. So I think most people who live in Luxembourg speak at least 4 languages.
Wow.
So 3 official plus English.
Crazy.
It's crazy.
The international school that you went to,
yeah.
was it English speaking? Or?
It was English speaking, but most of my friends were fluent in either French or German or both. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you would go into a cafe, how would you introduce yourself?
I was very shy because all my friends are these they speak French like amazingly. So like they would always be the one ordering for me, which in retrospect, I probably should have not let them do that because I'm a little shy when it comes to speaking in French. I chose French as my 3rd language to learn in school. So I went as far as getting the DELF B1. And B2 is what you need to go to like actual French colleges. So I got B1, but little by little, it's just fading away. Yeah, so I'm on Duolingo. Yeah.
Nice. You need some French-Korean practice partners to practice your French,
yeah. And you have many.
A few.
French, yeah.
And that community is growing, which is very cool to see.
Yeah.
Your decision after high school to come back to Korea, did you also apply to universities abroad, like either in Europe or in the States?
I did not. Which, again, blows the minds of many, many people that I've met, even in college, because most of my friends, they applied either to the UK and Korea or USA and Korea, but it was just me that applied just to Korean schools. And I think in my head, growing up in a household that was very Korean and on the back of our minds, because my dad was 주재원, which is when Korean companies send out their employees on the condition that they will be back to HQ. So maybe it was that. We always thought that we would be back in Korea. So I think that definitely did play a part. But then again, I think one of the biggest reasons was maybe that because I was aware that I, am from a big family, and my dad, he's just a 회사원. And I knew that my dad's company subsidized up to 3 children's college tuition on the condition that it has to be a Korean college.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think I knew that. So I thought, I want to live in Korea, and my dad's company subsidizes the tuition fee. And I know that, 4 years of college tuition, it sums up to a big sum of money. So why not just apply to Korea? I think that was it wasn't a really like a intentional decision. It was just so natural. Like even during high school, if I look back, all my friends would be filling out like UCAS applications, which is it's a British thing because I went to a British international school when I graduated. And I would just like watch my friends fill in their UCAS applications like, oh yeah, you can do it, you know, like put in Cambridge, put in Oxford. But I didn't do anything for myself because in my head I knew that I was just going to be applying for Korea a couple months after that.
Interesting. The other thing that I did want to ask you about was like, so I also come from a pretty big family, like one of 6.
Yeah.
And then the age gap between my oldest sister and my youngest brother is 13 years.
13 years.
And for me, I guess it's been very valuable having family members and growing up in like the Midwest of the US. Right. For you and your experience having siblings and that experience abroad compared to trying to imagine, even if it's possible, to have a similar experience, but you are either on your own or just like with one sibling. Was that pretty impactful in terms of your upbringing and I guess even your life in Korea in terms of having siblings?
I think definitely it did in a very, very positive way because like I remember when I converse with like adults, like grown-ups, the first thing that they would always say to me after like our first conversation is, wow, you're so mature for your age. And I got that a lot, like even since high school and in college, like all my professors would say that. And when I go volunteering, like all the seniors would say that. And now that I think of it, it's probably because I was always the 언니 or 누나 of the family. So me and my sister were the only ones with a very close age gap of just 1 year. The age gap between me and my youngest brother is 16 years. I think Korean age, 16 years.
Wow.
So him and my sister is 17 years. And me and my fourth 동생 is 11 years. So again, that's a huge age gap. So I remember coming back from school and I'm at home and it wasn't really like a chore. It's just like a new kind of, I would enter into like a new kind of door and then there my responsibilities would be taking care of my siblings. You know, just like, you know, hanging out with them. 막 즐겁게 춤을 추다 그대로 멈춰라. 약간 이거 노래 이런 songs I would sing a lot. I would read them books. We would just chill, you know, go out to the garden and, you know, make igloos. That was a huge part of my core memory that I have in Luxembourg. And I think that's what makes me so like rooted and stable because I know that even if I fall back a couple times, I will always have my siblings and my parents who are there for me. So there have been experiences where I had a really bad day, you know, at work. And then I would go back home. And as soon as I walk through our front door, like all of the stress that I had would just go away because like I'm now at my happy, stable place.
Yes.
So I'm really thankful that I'm able to have that like stability in my life.
I feel like for I guess our generation, like similar age range, like I'm 28 right now. When I talk to people in Korea, but also like Korean Americans, similar age range, it is very, very rare to find people that have like more than one or two siblings. Do you know a lot of other families that have like as big of families here in Korea as you do?
I only know a couple. Like I only know 2 other girls who grew up in I think with four children. They're the eldest of the 4, but that was the maximum I saw. And you're next, so you're third. So I've only seen 3 families.
That's
so
crazy.
Far.
That's crazy. It's such a different life that one lives when you have many siblings. Are most of your nuclear family now, are they all in Korea?
They're all in Korea. So again, I don't know, like maybe my dad timed this, but so when I graduated high school in 2015, around the same period of time, my dad was given the choice, do you want to come back to Korea or do you want to move to the States? And my dad made the decision of coming back to Korea. I think he probably knew that it might be better for our siblings, our younger siblings, to go to the States just, you know, for their education purposes. But honestly, I think my parents missed Korea because the condition was that when we were sent out to Milan in 2005, we would be there for 5 years and then come back to Korea. But then that just became 2 years in Milan and 8 years in Luxembourg.
Wow.
So that was double the timestamp that he was originally, you know, promised. So maybe he thought it was about time to come back. Yeah, so they made the decision of coming back.
And what is the thing that you miss most about living in Luxembourg? Even if there's a handful of things.
I mean, the biggest thing is just having the freedom to just cross borders without any border control. You just get on a car, get on a train, and you're crossing 3-4 countries at once.
And this is special to people that are based in Luxembourg, or this is just kind of Europe in general?
It's a European thing. It's a European thing.
Yeah.
So back in college, I would always tell my friends to go to Europe, like go to a school in Europe for exchange, because that means, of course, you'll get the academic experience, but you will just open your eyes to a whole new world of just jumping from country to country at such a low cost and also low barrier. And when else would you be able to experience that, especially in Korea, which is almost like an island because we can't go up to North Korea. So
yes.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's Europe is the I guess one area I still haven't explored.
You must.
The whole Cambridge project that I've been undertaking has helped educate me on living in Asia a little bit. And I had lived in Japan for 2 summers when I was in undergrad.
Yeah.
And then I just took a trip to Vietnam for the first time, first time in Southeast Asia as well.
Yeah.
That was really cool. But I still have to find some time to explore Europe.
You should. I mean, you have a lot of a building community of Korean French and Korean Germans in Cambridge as well. So
yes,
yeah, definitely gonna.
When you came back for college, in terms of what your expectation was and the fact that you hadn't been in traditional Korean education system, was there any jarring experience or cross-cultural challenges? What was that like?
Right. So again, in retrospect, I didn't attend this, but it just all worked out. The college that I attended is Underwood International College of Yonsei University, and it's the international college wing of Yonsei. So there's, first of all, many international students, and if not by nationality, at least by background. So one of my best friends, she used to live in Dubai, Australia, Sydney, I think, and then Frankfurt. And my other best friends, they lived in New Zealand and Shanghai, and so on and so forth. And you just go there, and the first thing that you'd say is, "Oh, so 어디에서 살다 왔어?"
Yes.
Yeah. So in terms of finding friends with similar kind of mindsets and values and backgrounds was not that difficult. And also education-wise, because it's an all-English-speaking liberal arts college, it gave me the liberty to choose whichever subjects that I wanted to choose, and all of them were in English. So the professors would teach in English, all the assignments would be in English, all the exams would be in English. So I think that act as a cushion as I was just landing back to Korea and adjusting my life living here as a Korean.
And is that's something that's special to Yonsei, that type of program, or does Korea University, SNU, these other universities have this?
Actually, SNU doesn't have one. Korea University does, and Ewha University is also.
I see.
I think their international department is the first to have ever been established in the country. Gyeonggi University, Hanyang University, so on and so forth.
And not that you had obviously gone to college in Europe or in the States, but in terms of how you would compare and contrast the Korean college education kind of experience as opposed to experiences that you've heard of from your friends in Europe or from people in the States, it's quite different?
So the biggest differentiating factor I would say is 휴학, which is taking time off. In Korea, it's the norm to take the time off. At least 1 or 2 semesters is a given. But I've heard that such concept doesn't really exist in the States or even in Europe. And I think that's, interestingly enough, is what leads the 2 different kind of ways to say, so in Korea, you say, I'm 16학번, which means I started school in 2016. But then in the States, when you say class of 2016, that's the year that you graduate, right?
Yes.
And that means that no one is skipping a year or no one is, taking off a year. Everyone will be graduating as class of 2016. Once you enter college in maybe 2012, then you are class of 2016. You call yourselves that.
Yes.
And I think from that, it's a given that no one's going to be taking time off. But then Korea, the class that you're called is the year that you entered. So you entered in 2016. You never know when you're going to leave college. For me, it was 2021. For my friends, it was 2022. If you go to the military, it might be 2024.
Yes.
So it's very fluid. And myself, I think I took 1 semester off. And I regret that. I should have probably taken way more off. Way more.
I thought you were going to say you regretted having taken the time off.
No. I should have just maxed it out.
Yeah.
I think the maximum you can do is like six
Wow.
semesters off. And yeah, I think that's the biggest differentiating factor. Yeah.
During that time that you took off, what were you doing?
I juggled, I think, 2 internships. So I interned at a Korean tech conglomerate called Line. It's a subsidiary, not anymore, but then it was a subsidiary of Naver, which is an IT big tech in Korea. And I interned at 500 startups, which now rebranded into 500 Global, I think. It's a Silicon Valley-based venture capital.
Line now is owned by a Japanese conglomerate?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And when you were at Yonsei, in terms of career path and what your aspirations were, how much clarity did you have over that?
Oh, 0. It's because I have so many different interests and fields of interests that I have no idea which one to choose. So that's why I chose the process of elimination, which again, I didn't intend on doing, but now in retrospect, I can see that I had put myself in the situation where I would try something out, and if it didn't work out, I would just cross it off the list. So namely, the first ever internship that I did was a studio intern for NBC Universal, the American broadcasting for Pyeongchang Olympics. Actually, it was super cool. So I wanted to work I thought I wanted to work in broadcasting media, like I don't know, become like an announcer.
Yes.
But then for that 1 month, seeing how much like the behind the scenes, and you're on air for maybe 30 minutes, but then the amount of just like wait time that you have before that and everything else, in my eyes, I thought, it might not be my thing. So I crossed that off the list. And then I returned to school and I became the editor-in-chief of the Yonsei Annals, which is a English monthly magazine, oldest English monthly magazine in Yonsei. And I was before a reporter there, an editor there. And I think by the time I returned, I became the editor-in-chief. And I said, okay, then let's try out what this kind of editor-in-chief, like reporter, editor life, how that would work out for me. And the conclusion to that was I love writing and I love to, make someone else's writing better and make this publication a better quality. But I just didn't see myself chase that as a career. Maybe it could be my other thing, like a side thing that I write on the side. But me personally, I couldn't quite envision myself becoming a reporter. So again, I crossed that off. It was a series like that.
Yeah.
So I think I had maybe 5 internships before I finally kind of chose the path that I did, and maybe like 3 or 4 extracurricular activities.
Wow. And this is why the model, like the Korean model of identifying your classes when you enter and then not putting like a hard stop on like doing for 4 years or 5 years is probably good, because like it seems like the ultimate purpose for college is to try as many interesting things as possible.
That's how I see it.
And if you're just sitting in the classroom, it's very hard to get a real understanding of what you want to do.
Unless you want to go to like law school or med school, like any of the, or grad school, all the schools that, make you purchase more knowledge and more academia, then of course. But I didn't see myself going to any of those schools. So I just went for the experiences.
It's interesting because many of the people that I have found fun to have conversations with do have this similar, like went to the Underwood College background.
They did, yeah. And debate, right?
And also debate. Yes. Debate. So tell me a little bit about the debate experience. Did you had prior debate experience as well?
So yeah, my debate experience started, I think, in high school when I was just conversing with a friend, and I kept seeing myself like being stuck in sentences and like not being able to speak my mind as freely as I would want to, or as I was able to do so in Korean. So I thought, okay, I need to fix this. What could I do to fix it? And the first thing I saw was like the debate club poster, like recruiting poster. So I went there and I said, I want to start debating, which was a perfect opportunity actually, because being in a debate club in an international school in Europe means that you get to travel all across Europe for like competitions. So I went to Prague for a competition. Like our coach, who was our history teacher, just, booked a bus, and it was just him and like the 5 of us on the bus and just going to Prague and, debating there. And we did that, I think, in Germany too, France. So we were all across Europe, participating in competitions and seeing all these kids who are really fancy with like their fancy suits from like the one that their dads bought and Hugo Boss for them, because like he owns like a hotel chain. But seeing myself kind of sometimes, of course, lose, but also, crush them at times was really satisfying and fulfilling for me. So when I started attending Yonsei and when I was looking at the list of student clubs to join, of course, debate was the first thing that caught my eye. And that was YUU. Yonsei, I forgot. Oh my gosh, this is...
YUU is just the abbreviation for the debates. Like,
it really is, yeah. I should know this. Underwood Union. There you go. Yonsei Underwood Union. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. And it's very interesting because that's maybe one of my regrets of like in high school and in undergrad of like not having done debate. It seems like from just intellectual developments, super healthy. Just to like spar with different ideas. But I've always found those people either I guess like intimidating to some extent.
There's so many intimidating things. I completely get you.
But the thing that I admire is that people are very highly articulate from a language perspective in terms of it serving the purpose that you hoped it would serve, of you becoming more comfortable articulating yourself in English, and also like English versus Korean now. Like, I guess describe your experience. Are you more comfortable in one language versus the other, or would you say you're equally comfortable in both?
I think I am equally comfortable, but then the first thing, maybe not the first thing, one of the things that I noticed as I continued my studies at Yonsei is that I am extremely comfortable speaking in Korean, but then writing Korean to the business kind of quality standard level, that's something I've never ever experienced in my life. Like I've never written a Korean like academic essay before in my life. And the fact that I'm attending an international college didn't really help. But then I didn't really want to put myself out there and just attend a full Korean lesson, which I did for multiple times. But then that's usually the exams are about like memorizing all the key details, like all the dates, so many small details that the Korean kids, I could not beat the Korean kids. They are pros at memorizing all the little details. So I stayed away from taking Korean lessons and stuck to like the UIC lessons. So I never really had the chance of writing in Korean, which was another reason why I joined GMT, which is a Korean business student association of Yonsei. And there, for the first time, I learned how to write in a business formal way, like PPT friendly, because it's all about kind of articulating your thoughts and putting logic behind them, and then putting that into a PPT format and then presenting them in front of, management. That's what the association kind of prepped us to. And I think that really did change the way I viewed like, oh, this kind of work could be fun. So I considered applying for consulting for some time, but then took that back because my internships in Line and also 500 Global taught me that I'm more of a like techie person. Like the culture there and the pace there really fit me.
In terms of like maybe I'm over indexing on the types of people that I'm interviewing, but the thing that surprises me is how many like extracurriculars or like communities some of these people are involved in.
Right.
Is that maybe unique to people in like debate background, or is it fairly common for most undergrad students in Korea to be involved with many different extracurricular activities and have a lot of like side projects and things like that? Because it seems like you had quite a few things going on.
Yeah, I did. But I don't know if I can put like a specific like label or keyword or like classification to the type of people, because like even in debate, I was an avid debater for the first semester. But then from the second semester, it slowly faded away, like my interest in debate. But then all my friends who started debate at the same time as me, they stuck to debate for like 3-4 years until they graduated. And because that was so like time consuming and energy consuming, that's probably all they did. Or I'm not really close to most of them anymore, so I don't know. I'm not following up on their whereabouts. They could have done more, but from what I know, they were extremely passionate about debating, so they would go on like world debate championships, and preparing for that, takes a lot of time, right? So I don't think it's the debate factor. But then again, I also don't think it's like the international factor, because a lot of my friends also prefer just focusing on one or two things. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Tell me about you had mentioned this briefly the last time we spoke, but you had the opportunity to interview like the first female foreign minister of South Korea.
Yes.
Like how did that come about?
She's a girl boss. Her name is Kang Kyung-hwa. She was the first female foreign minister, but also first foreign minister who was able to get to that position without taking the 외무고시, which is it's like an examination that you have to take in order to enter the Ministry of Foreign.
Like some civil service kind of exam?
Affairs. Yeah. And it's extremely difficult. So all like the top minds at Yonsei, I've seen students who prepped for that for many, many years and still didn't make it in the end.
Wow.
So actually, I might have to fact check that. But from what I know, she was the first one who didn't take the actual standard way of working your way up the ladder, taking the examination, entering the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and then working yourself up the ladder. But she was specially appointed by, I think, the president himself, which was, I think, Moon Jae-in 대통령 back then. And she happened to be, I think, 일기, so like the first generation of the Yonsei Annals, which is the English magazine that I mentioned earlier. And she happened to be an editor-in-chief back in her times. And I happened to become editor-in-chief exactly around the same time that she was appointed as the minister. So, of course, her alma mater and her old magazine would get one chance, one golden ticket to, visit the MOFA and have an exclusive interview with her. And I was lucky enough to be the one that led that. So, I got out like the nicest shirt I owned and like put on some slacks and then, all my notes, and we went to MOFA and we interviewed her. And I think my kind of take to that interview was, everyone interviews her on all the policies and, all her professional backgrounds. So why not focus more on her personal kind of experience, who she was like as a student, what her life as a mother was like, how kind of balancing her life as a mother and like a really successful career woman was like. So in the end, we published this article, which did get a lot of kind of praise for the angle that it took. So yeah, it's one of the proudest achievements that I have.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was there anything particularly surprising or unexpected in terms of her responses that came out of the interview? Yeah.
So she said, you cannot be perfect in anything. And I think back then, I was in my junior year, I was striving to be perfect at everything. And I thought it was an achievable and maintainable goal. But then seeing this amazing woman leader telling me and all our other reporters that you just can't. Like, I've tried it, but you cannot be perfect in anything. So in everything. So you have to choose. Like, are you going to be like a good mother, or are you going to be, crushing it at what you're doing? And frankly, she said that she tried her best. But then there were times that her family and her children maybe didn't get as much attention as was needed in those formative years of their childhood. So yeah, I think that stuck with me for a while. Yeah.
In terms of career interest or profession, do roles like that, have they, because I mean, it seems like your background is kind of like ideal for the types of people that occupy those roles,
right,
in terms of having like international background, having done debate, things like that. Have you thought about pursuing like either like politics or being a diplomat or some sort of like foreign minister? Has that career track been of interest?
It always have. It was always top of the list when it comes to like, oh, what do you want to become, Yesun, when you grow up? 외교관 was top on the list, but as I was graduating, I think I was leaning more towards just the private sector, because I do want to live a comfortable life, and I do want a life where my worth, like meritocracy, basically. So like, if based on merit, if I can prove to the world that I'm this good, then my market value jumps that much.
Yes.
But then I know that this is not the reality when it comes to the public sector. So I wanted to start out in the private sector, and then hopefully, I don't know when, but there will come a time where this would merge with how I can chip into the country and do something that would be beneficial for the country. So I think jokingly, I tell my friends, like, years down the road, I may be Korea's next foreign minister. Like, that's one of the aspirations that I have, because I want to be able to represent the country and what it is, in that kind of global arena. I want Korea to, get the respect that it deserves, get the acclamation that it deserves. And I think I'm slowly working myself up to that kind of standard.
Yes. Well, it's a perfect overlap in terms of Cambridge and the impact that it hopes to have as well.
Right.
And in a similar light, there are things that I want to do or am prioritizing from a business professional standpoint of ultimately, if this is a project that I want to do longer term,
right.
There has to be some sort of value creation that translates into profit so that I can continue to do this. But on the flip side, there are also maybe supplementary things like side projects where I hope that K-Bridge can have an impact just doing good in the world.
Right.
And so there have been a number of individuals who have reached out about different community service projects and things like that. I know that during your time at Yonsei and then even afterwards, you'd been involved in some sort of community service projects. Yeah. Can you talk to me about the ones that you invested the most time and energy into and were most passionate about?
Right. I did have a couple projects along the line, but then the biggest and the longest one is definitely KLC, which is short for the Korea Legacy Committee. It's a nonprofit, government-accredited nonprofit organization that strives to fight off senior poverty in Korea. It was founded in 2015. I found out about the organization in 2017. And on that same year, I was offered the position to join the board of directors because back then, I think they were going through some generational changes in the board of directors, and they wanted some fresh, younger soul who could, chip in a way that would resonate more with the younger generation, the target generation. So I was offered the position to join, and I took it because one of my mottos is you just grab all the opportunities that you get.
Sure.
And I think when I accepted that offer, the founder did mention that you would be the youngest board member to ever join. And I don't think I fully grasped the meaning of that until later, years down the road. As the responsibilities got bigger and bigger, I truly understood what that meant but I think that was a better kind of beginning because I wasn't too burdened or too stressed out about what points I can mention, what ideas I can give. So I was more free and, just open about my contributions to the board of directors in the beginning. So yeah.
Wow.
It was a fun ride.
And in terms of what KLC did or continues to do in terms of poverty alleviation,
right.
It runs programs to feed elderly people on a regular basis?
Yes. So we started out as more of a volunteer platform where we would connect volunteer centers who are in need of younger volunteers with the pool of volunteers that we possessed. And it started out with monthly volunteers. So it was just one volunteer per month where we would go to soup kitchens or government facilities that needed volunteers and would give out the food to the elderly. That's how we started. And we also had a fundraising model because we also did regular donations to these facilities. So that came in, forms of parties mostly. So we hosted, what's one I can remember? Christmas parties, for example, and also galas, charity galas to fundraise. And then this eventually developed into a more stable and more impactful model where KLC actually found this one restaurant, and we didn't really acquire it because it's still monthly rent, but we got most of their kind of equipment and their kitchen facility. And we renovated that pro bono from this amazing interior design company. And we switched that up and rebranded that space into what is called the Legacy Kitchen. And it's still being operated now. This morning, they fed, I think, 300 people, 300 seniors from that kitchen.
Wow.
And now it's not a monthly volunteer platform model, but it's a weekly we do it ourselves volunteer model. So we have 20 volunteers come to the kitchen every week, and they would cook meals 200, 300 servings, and then send that out to all our partner volunteer centers where KLC volunteers are waiting for the lunch boxes to arrive. And then they send that out to all the elderlies. And with this model, KLC's been feeding more than 2,000 seniors a month for over 2 years, I believe.
Wow. And this whole like poverty alleviation effort for I guess like the elderly within Korea, this is like a big issue, big challenge.
It is a big issue. Korea's senior poverty rate is has been number one for more than a decade among all the OECD countries. People don't realize this, but almost 1 out of 2 elderlies are partly suffering from poverty, in that they cannot eat when they want. They cannot, eat as much as they want. And this actually exacerbated during COVID season. COVID, the pandemic, because many of the soup kitchens and the government facilities that targeted and helped out these seniors actually shut down during those times, saying that it's for the health of the elderly. Then that meant that the people who were getting their one and only meal a day lost their source.
Wow.
And that's when KLC really changed the model from just being a platform to like just doing it ourselves.
Fascinating. And the reason why it's not as well known or talked about is just because maybe there's some sort of like embarrassment of the fact that it's a reality, or what are the main reasons from your perspective?
Actually, there are a lot of just articles coming out. Like if you just neighbor it or Google it now, you'll see like the most recent article probably was from like a day ago. It's just more of an awareness thing, or it's something that people hear about and then they go, oh no, what do we do about that? And then kind of pass. But then I don't think that's a senior poverty issue. I think that's just a general issue that is happening, I think, worldwide. But since I'm living in Korea, I feel it more.
Yes.
Because there are these numerous issues happening and people are aware of those issues and they are concerned about the issues, but then that's it. They just go on about their lives. And although I get that, in order to make change, like there has to be that one step further, right? You have to act to do something.
Yes.
And I should mention that I was part of KLC until last year, October. And after almost 7 years of my volunteering and leadership there, I ended my term at KLC. And now I'm on the lookout of what else could I do to bring like positive change to the world, especially to Korea.
Yes.
To start with, like local change that needs to happen. And I'm still, in the process of thinking.
That makes sense. In terms of this kind of recurring dynamic of people knowing about societal issues that exist within Korea, kind of understanding it on maybe like a surface level, or realizing that it's going to be a problem and maybe snowball as time progresses, but not really taking action to remedy it. Are you hopeful that that things will change, that there will be some like reckoning moment where people will decide like, okay, we actually need to do things? I guess like what's your overall outlook, or what are the big things, needle movers?
I don't think there's gonna be a time where like this groundbreaking event happens and then people suddenly realize that we need change, because I feel like the past couple months, starting from the then president, declaring martial law, and then all how that broke loose to our economy, to just the credibility of the country. I think that itself is a pretty groundbreaking moment. But then again, and I see some positive change in that my friends who never ever used to post anything political on their stories or their posts were voicing their concerns openly. More friends than ever before, like even before President Park Geun-hye, like I think more people were voicing their concerns and not being ashamed or too worried about voicing that opinion, because I feel like there's this thing where it's not almost as a stigma, like you don't voice political or religious opinions. But I think again that's a universal thing, it's not just a Korean thing. So I think the momentum is there because people are openly voicing their concerns, and many people have also participated in the protests. Again, a very cool, fun K-pop protests. I was taking over Gwanghwamun, and also have you seen those?
No, I haven't.
Really? So I think it's not just a me and my friends thing. It's a generational thing that people in their 20s especially were beginning to voice their concerns about this political issue. And because Korean people in their 20s, most of them have been K-pop stans or are currently K-pop stans. Many people own at least one Korean 응원봉, light sticks in their household. So they took their light sticks and took to the streets. It's been a huge kind of like headliner for like BBC, CNN. They were all saying, oh, Korea, the land of K-pop, is protesting the K-pop way. And that was true. Like people were blasting K-pop music and they were singing along to that and like screaming, oh, 윤석열 퇴진, along with the K-pop songs with the light sticks. It's like BTS light sticks, Girls' Generation, Big Bang light sticks, like all the different light sticks. And people in their 20s and their 30s and even their teens just took to the streets. So the momentum is really there. So I feel like more kind of small wins like this needs to accumulate to make a more kind of just like a paradigm shift almost, where voicing your concerns, especially about political and societal issues, is no longer like a stigma, but it's more a thing that's cool. Like, you know, you're voicing your concerns and you're acting to change that. It has to be more of an awareness thing, I feel like.
Yes.
And in order to achieve that, there needs to be more platforms that encourage them to do that. And I know a couple platforms like New Ways, which is a startup that tries to kind of reduce that gap between, you know, the younger generation and political issues.
Yes.
And recently I went to a community, a newly budding community called 다시 만드는 세상, which again directly translates to the world that we are rebuilding together. And again, they're also trying to get people who were previously not so invested in political issues, kind of getting their attention and having them in the same room and kind of trying to discuss ideas and solutions to fix all the different societal problems that there are.
Well, that is encouraging. I do think that as somebody who doesn't really know anything about like Korean politics, the thing, I guess the high level observation is the degree to which there is very serious divisiveness across either like generations or people of different political lines or across genders. That is something that it's quite intimidating, but at the same time, I'm hopeful that there can be actions that are taken where definitely. There are bridges that get built between them.
Yes.
I think the key thing is that the actions that are being taken, it's so easy for especially sensitive topics to just devolve into like shouting back and forth and not really hearing. And for there to be some action that's taken that translates into productive progress is a very tricky thing to figure out, right? But I do think that like even having conversations like this on the podcast are like is one step in the right direction.
It definitely is.
So I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
In terms of the early career decisions that you did make, like one thing I'm curious about is you did work for Kakao, right?
I did, yeah.
And that, at least just from my like simplistic vantage point, is like very Korean company.
It definitely is, yeah.
And you having a more international background, and even though going to Yonsei, you were mostly around other like international student backgrounds as well. What was the decision to start your career there, and how was that experience adjusting to Korean working culture?
Right. I mean, I think, you know, running back all the different interests that I had and all the different opportunities I took, the one overarching theme or keyword is global. And that's true for the Yonsei Annals because I was writing about global issues in English. It's true about Line, which is a global messenger, and I was in charge of, you know, just collecting all the little newsletters and then sending it out to like over 7,000 employees worldwide. And for Kakao, again, the global keyword was there because I applied for their global internship. And it was an internship that called for people with global backgrounds who spoke either English, Chinese, or I think French. And the reason was because they were building this Webtoon platform. And Webtoon, for those who might not be familiar, is a digital comics that's innate to Korea. It's an innately Korean type of content that was created, I think, in the early 2000s in a Korean platform called Daum. It was like a website, and they started out by drawing in comics, and then they had, I think it was weekly. They posted it weekly, and then that created a whole culture of webtoons. Like, there's no Korean teenager that does not read webtoons. That's still true now, and it was still true when I was growing up.
Wow.
So in Luxembourg, I can't remember if it was web or app. I think it was web. I would come back to school, and it would be 3 p.m. And because of the time difference, if it's 3 p.m., it's 11 p.m. in Korea. And when it's 11 p.m., that means the next batch of webtoons are uploaded exactly at that time. So it was a routine for me. I would come back from school and read webtoons. So having that kind of experience in my life, when I saw, Kakao Page, which is a Webtoon platform, is looking for global interns, I thought, that's perfect. That's me. So I applied and I got in. And after 2 months of internships, they offered me the full-time position. So I was lucky enough to join as a full-time employee. And the first thing that I did there was global sourcing, which is sourcing Webtoon IPs, which is short for intellectual properties, from Korean content providers, and writing up contracts and settling invoices and sending the titles, we call them wongo, so actual image files, and getting them translated, and then and then distributing that to whatever platform that they were being sold on. So that was the first 1 year of my life at Kakao.
Wow. So the way that the Webtoons industry works is if Kakao has or manages a platform where these Webtoons are being published, they are independent kind of creators, like Webtoon creators that like submit their Webtoons, and then Kakao or some centralized organization will decide which ones make it to the cut?
Yeah, that's basically the gist of it. But then that developed into individuals were, just too caught up in actually drawing the Webtoons themselves to take care of anything else, like global publishing or, all the contract parts of it. So that's why they they got into contract with larger business entities called CPs, content providers. And Kakao was in partnership with dozens of these CPs, and some Kakao acquired for, get their hands on the better quality IPs. And that's why when I did contracts to distribute these Webtoons worldwide, it was rarely done with an individual writer. It was mostly done with the CPs. It was like their agency. Yeah. And
so this is an industry that's quite foreign to me. So the way that Webtoons works is I should think of it like a comic book that is like in scrolling format.
It is, yeah.
Is that what it is?
So a comic book, if it's Japanese, you would flip it this way. If it's Korean, you would flip it this way. Yeah. But then it's a digitized scroll type format. So, the content itself isn't massively different. It's just the format that you view the content in that's different. And
most of the readership of Webtoons is I would assume like 90% plus is just Koreans.
So it started out in Korea, but then it slowly and steadily is taking over, maybe not taking over, taking over the market share of Japanese, like traditional kind of manga. So I think the first and one of the most important markets for any Webtoon platform, when they say they go global, they probably mean Japan. Because, Japan is the land of manga, is the land of anime. So it's one of the most important markets to conquer.
Yes.
And it was difficult in the beginning. Like, even if you put like the best IPs that we possess in Japan, it just didn't work. But then slowly and steadily, like some of the titles were gaining success. And I believe in terms of market share, like just Korean Webtoon platforms are number one right now in just the Japanese broader like manga and digital comics industry.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and that used to be Kakao's platform, which I now believe was taken over by Naver's platform. It's an endless race between the two of them.
And the money making opportunity there, or like the way that they generate revenue, is people pay for the Webtoons or specific Webtoons, or they purchase like merchandise related to different Webtoons brands, or how does it work?
You'd be surprised. It's just paying for each episode of the Webtoons. But this again is different from platform to platform. Kakao took the method of paying revenue share method. So depending on how many episodes were sold within that 1 month, they would give a portion of that to the original writer, to the original artist. I think for Naver, they pay a flat fee, but then the dynamics are always changing. So it's either revenue share or a flat fee, depending on the readership.
And do you recall, like when you were working in that industry, what the split was between men and women who would read it, or is it fairly good representation?
Again, that's another interesting factor. And it's all, again, different from platform to platform, because the kind of content that each platform serve and they have mastered over the years is different. So Kakao Page is very, very, very known for a genre called romance fantasy. You've probably never heard of it, right?
No.
I was also new to the genre when I joined Kakao page. It's a huge genre. I mean, it's Konglish, I think, romance fantasy, but it's basically a fictional genre where the entire setting is based in like medieval Renaissance Europe. But then I, the protagonist, am a Korean college kid, and as I was on the way to work, my arubaito, I get hit by a bus or a truck, and then I wake up as this princess in the Renaissance times, and yeah, I'm being loved by like 6 different men, and I have to choose which one I'm gonna marry. Literally, it goes like that. That's a whole genre.
Wow.
And this is so big amongst older women, so like 40s, 50s even. It's so interesting because I started Kakao page thinking that Webtoon was for kids, you know, like just like teenage kids, because I was like I was.
Yes.
But Kakao page, it's different, and that's because of the genre romance fantasy. Like people love to get sucked into that fantasy world that is so different from the reality that we're living in. It gives them that kind of pleasure as they're reading. They can't stop not reading it, so they keep paying for it. So the romance fantasy title makes large sums of money, meaning more and more artists jump into that genre. So if you open up Kakao page right now, before I would like more than half of the trending list is that genre.
Fascinating.
But then for Naver Webtoon, which is number 1 in the market in terms of traffic, it has a plethora of other genres like sports genre, like just like reality, like Office, comics, like just like so much more. It's just like modern romance. And the biggest differentiating factor here is that Naver is mostly free. It started out as being mostly free. Kakao started out as you had to pay to read the next episodes. So if there's a new title that launched with 30 episodes on Naver, from episode 1 to 25 would be free. And then 26 to 30, you would have to pay.
Yes, that makes sense.
But for Kakao page, episodes 1 to 5 would be free. And then 6 to 30, you had to pay. That's why Naver started out as being number 1 in traffic, and Kakao page eventually became number 1 in revenue. Although I'm not caught up with, you know, who's number 1 where anymore. So the demographics here is definitely, you know, women in their 30s, 40s, 50s with with the money they can spend on reading. And here it was mostly teens like me back in Luxembourg, reading whatever's free and waiting until the next week to get the next episodes and not really paying to watch more.
Fascinating. And you were working in this industry the entirety of your stay at Kakao, which was like 4 years or so, right?
Yes, it was the webtoons and eventually web novels industry.
Yeah. And then you decide to make the switch, right? So
yes,
now you're doing work in K-pop industry.
I am, yeah.
Can you tell me about what you're doing now and kind of your decision to move on to something new?
Yeah, so in order to explain what I'm doing now, I have to go through the many projects that I was given the opportunity to lead in Kakao. So after my first year of global sourcing, I'd noticed that, I really hate repetitive work and where I'm not able to kind of, strategically contribute to create even more revenue. Like that was not possible in global sourcing. Like the contract was already fixed. All you had to decide or negotiate with the partners is for the minimum guarantee, are you going to get 200만 원 or 300만 원? Or for the revenue share, are you going to get like, I don't know, this many percent or like 1% point more than that? Like that was the only flexibility that you had as the 담당자. So I think then in my head, it was easier to just jump ship than to confront the leaders to talk about the issue. So funnily enough, the boss that I had back at Line offered me a junior position to work as a growth marketer back at Line. So I went through the recruiting process. I got the offer letter. So I went to my team lead and said, I'm going to quit at the end of June. And he probably thought he wasn't, good enough to persuade me. So he sent me straight to the VP. And then the VP said, why are you quitting? And I explained to him, well, it's not that I love the concept of becoming a growth marketer or I love Line. It's probably more that I don't really like the job that I have right now at Kakao. But I just didn't see how I could, move positions because back then we were really short-staffed, and I think we were at a recruiting freeze. So like they needed me to do that position, and in my head, if I left, then they would just get a replacement of me, and I would just be happy, doing something other than global sourcing. And then he asked me, well, what is it that you want to do at Kakao? And I said, I want to do strategy, not really knowing what that meant. Probably because it sounded cool, and my boss, the VP, was a strategic consultant. Like he was based in Bain. He worked at Bain for maybe 3 years, and then Kearney for like 8 years. So he was a consultant for most of his career. And he said, okay, if that's what you think, I'm going to be creating a team called Global Strategy Team right away, and see if you can live up to what you said you wanted to do. And then he put me through a lot of challenges. So like starting with research, creating reports, and then one by one, as I was proving him with small wins, and because the recruiting freeze was still on, there were projects that needed, people to manage, project managers to run the projects. And he thought, okay, after all the challenges I put her through, I think she's been doing pretty good. So let me test her with another real project. And that was the launching of Kakao Webtoon in France. Yeah, it was a daunting first project to ever handle, because I was the business PM handling the launch of an actual product with, seasoned developers, seasoned programmers, like people in legal, people in finance. Like I was the one kind of cross-functionally coordinating everything. It was really, really hard. I think that was the most stressed out I've been in the 4 years that I've been in Kakao. But also one of the most rewarding experiences that I had. And after that project came many other projects. And sometimes it was hard because in my head, I'm thinking, where is this all leading? Like, I don't want to become like a full-time project manager. And I don't want to become like a full-time chief of staff of someone. So little by little, I started putting the puzzles together and thinking, what of these experiences did I like? And what do I want to leave behind? And I concluded that, I think I really like business development, because that's a mixture of strategy. So you have to, form a go-to-market strategy or local marketing strategy or whatever, and also execute that strategy in a project. So I talked to the VP, and Kakao back then was in a time where no new businesses or new ideas could be tried. It was just at a very difficult time of its history. That was last year. So I thought maybe my stay here is, nearing towards an end.
Yes.
And I began having a lot of coffee chats with people, and then thought, I don't really want to end up being this business development manager in a local business. I still wanted to maintain the global keyword and also be able to serve as its business development manager. So I ended up, I think it was 3 different companies that I got an offer from, and chose MAKESTAR, which is where I am right now.
I'll ask you more about MAKESTAR in just a second. But when you were managing the project in France, like that launch, aside from Korea and Japan, in terms of Webtoons readership, globally, both in Europe and maybe like the Americas, what are the countries that consume the most of Webtoons? And does it typically tend to be like Korean diaspora types of populations, or like Asian diaspora populations? Or are there also a lot of foreigners consuming these Webtoons as well?
It's a mixture of both, because we've noticed that we've drawn so many Venn diagrams, like K-pop and Webtoons, K-drama and Webtoons. But then the Venn diagram with the largest overlapping section was anime and Webtoons. It's the 2D artist, I think, the keyword that resonates throughout the people who appreciate both anime and Webtoons. I think it comes from the art itself. It's like K-pop and K-drama, it's all about like humans and people actually who exist. And within the population who love anime, there's the diaspora, but also the local love, right? So I think it's a mixture of both. And in Europe, I think France and Germany definitely would be top 2 when it comes to interests in Webtoons. I think Germany has the largest publication market in Europe, and France, really interestingly enough, have this long kind of standing history of loving comics. They call it BD, It's their form of calling comics. And they have like characters and comics that's been loved by generations and generations of children. So they're more open to the actual medium itself.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So I mean, when you say the words like Korea and global, like Webtoons is a big category.
Yeah.
K-pop is another big category.
Exactly. Yeah.
In terms of, you provided the context of how you made the transition to MAKESTAR. In terms of what MAKESTAR does and what your role is there, can you share a little bit more?
So MAKESTAR is a K-pop commerce platform, and when I say that, people are like, what commerce? And it's mainly albums and merchandise. So MAKESTAR started out as a K-pop crowdfunding platform, actually, because the founder of MAKESTAR, he comes from a very label-centric background. He was a co-founder at an agency called FNC Entertainment. With their most known, groups are like CN Blue, FT Island, AOA, although yeah, they're probably all new names to you, but for all the K-pop stands out there, they're oldies but goodies.
What is the stands? What is that?
Stands. It's like, fans. People who stan K-pop. They support K-pop.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So he comes from a very label-centric background and identified the problem as entertainment is not techie at all. So we're falling behind. And also, people always talk about taking the artists global, but then they have no means or no data or no kind of actual resources to do that. So with those two problems, he created his own startup back in 2015, which was MAKESTAR. And he started out as a global crowdfunding platform. So he would say, okay, this artist wants to create the next album, but we need your help and money in order to do that. And based on that, he would get data from what countries and like what gender, like what age group, really support this group. And he would get that from multiple groups. And based on that, we would be able to consult these agencies like, oh, try going to South America first, or, like Europe, try going to Japan first. Like, I think that's how MAKESTAR started as a crowdfunding platform. Eventually, it grew into a K-pop album commerce platform. So if you want to get K-pop albums, you get it at MAKESTAR, is what they wanted to kind of position themselves as. And having lived in Luxembourg before and knowing how hard it is to get K-pop albums locally, I think it definitely did change the lives of many like K-pop stans who wanted to get albums without having any Korean friends or family, because it used to be really hard. But then that's something that not just MAKESTAR was solving, but many of its other competitors were solving. So MAKESTAR, again, gets its competitive edge from selling more albums through events. So these albums, in such cases, serve as tickets. So if you want to go to an in-person fan meeting of this group, you buy albums on MAKESTAR. The more albums you buy, the higher the chance that you're going to actually win a seat to go to that fan meeting. But in order to host such events, you need to have connections with the labels. And that's why MAKESTAR has a very strong portfolio of VPs who used to be CEOs at different labels in the past, and now they serve at MAKESTAR, and they're the core kind of strength of MAKESTAR's sales power. And that's where right now we have over 360 label networks, and we've partnered with over 700 artists to provide more than 2,000 projects.
Wow.
So it's pretty big.
And in the V1 of MAKESTAR, when it served as a crowdsourcing platform, the reason why these fans were paying money wasn't necessarily because the capital was needed. It was more so just to gauge like where the interest is from the fan base.
Well, from the fans' point of view, they were truly really helping out the group that they want to help out, which is, again, another really endearing and sweet aspect of K-pop.
Right.
And the fan community. They always want to help out the groups that aren't really getting the attention or the love that they deserve. They're always out there like marketing them, actually doing these crowdfunding projects on their own. But then in their perspective, finally there's a platform that allows us to do that without us having to plan it. So from the fans' point of view, they do want to give the capital. They do want to keep on writing comments so that this would boost up the group's profile in the public's eyes.
Yep.
And from our point of view, it's, we're getting data.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I guess like to analogize this is like if you're in the NBA, right?
Yeah.
You're like a famous basketball player.
Yeah.
It's like you would never go to crowdfunding because you're making millions of dollars. And if I was to like do the same comparison between K-pop industry, I would think that like the big K-pop artists, like there's no need for them to do any crowdfunding stuff. Is it mostly like these types of crowdfunding activities are mostly for like, let's say minor league players, or the major league players are also doing it? The capital is not so important, but it's just an opportunity for the fans to be a part of the project.
I think it's more the minor groups that do need the capital, that do need the attention, that do need the interest. But because MAKESTAR started out as crowdfunding, but then we grew into a more kind of just like general e-commerce and general events company. The focus on crowdfunding is, decreasing by the day. And right now, if you look at our projects, maybe 99% is non-crowdfunding and only 1% is crowdfunding. What's more important in kind of strengthening MAKESTAR's position in the market, is its ability to sell albums in bulk. Because, all the artists, when they make their new comebacks, they want to be able to market, we sold 100 million albums. We're a million seller. So it's that kind of marketing, I think, that labels truly want. But of course, they also want the opportunity to engage with fans. But then when it comes to these labels and agencies, having the right resources to create the right groups and give them the right songs, produce them the right way, is already enough. So they cannot have most of them, they don't have the resources or the time, the headspace to have a separate team to plan these events. That's why they come to platforms like MAKESTAR, because we do it for them and they get that extra revenue.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And your role and responsibility at MAKESTAR, still very globally minded. Yeah.
Right.
What are you responsible for there?
In a nutshell, I'm just responsible for the top line of the North American and European market. So anything I can do to grow the revenue there, I try and I execute, and then I learn from that, and then I re-execute. So our strategy so far has been, MAKESTAR has many kind of different business sectors, so like album, e-commerce, events, merchandise. And we've noticed that my hypothesis is that we have to start out with the event space first, because when it comes to albums, the market is already satiated, and there's a lot of other platforms and players within the market, even in North America and Europe. But then when it comes to events, this is where the fans are the most thirsty. Like, they don't really have any events going on locally, but they know and want that experience, because if you're a K-pop stan, like, you're always on Twitter, you're always on YouTube, and you're seeing all these amazing pop-up stores and all these amazing events where fans get to meet their artists. But then that opportunity isn't there, especially for North America and Europe. The opportunity is there for Asia, like Japan, no problem. Taiwan, no problem. China, no problem. But then all our Western world friends need that. So we're trying to give them what they want, little by little. And I've been kind of testing my hypothesis and kind of trying to refine the strategy, the go-to-market strategy, and also execute. And to do that, we need a bigger team, because I joined as the first employee of the North America and Europe team, and we're still recruiting to find the right people to do it with. It's very exciting, yeah.
Okay, so if there are people in K-Bridge ecosystem that are very interested in K-pop industry, they should reach out to you.
Definitely, yeah. I would love to give them a tour, because our office building, we use the entire building. On B1, we have the MAKESTAR shop, where people come and buy albums, and we host events there all the time.
Wow.
And also B2, we have what's called MAKESTAR Hall, which is where we actually hold the in-person fan signs. So artists, their cars come to MAKESTAR like almost every day, and we host events there. And so I'd love to, have a coffee chat there and show them the space and lure them in.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. Very cool. And in terms of adoption of K-pop kind of globally, and especially in North America and Europe, where that's your focus, I guess there's always a question of like how saturated the market is and how much green space there continues to be.
Right.
Maybe your assessment is like very, indexed on the MAKESTAR artists, right? Because that's like your focus. But are you still seeing like quite a lot of adoption in North America and in Europe?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. In our IR material, you can see that next to South Korea and China, the US is the next big market. South Korea, China, and Japan, the big three in Asia. The US is the biggest market. And if you combine all the 1% revenue and visitors from all the European countries, if you combine that, again, it sums up to a huge amount. So already there's a lot of traffic and revenue happening from that market in MAKESTAR, but not just for MAKESTAR. For K-pop, like North America and Europe are huge markets. It's just markets that not many labels really truly understand. And there aren't that many players that can get them to really truly understand the markets and, drive it up to its full potential. So we are trying to become that solution for them. Like, oh, you don't understand the European market? It's okay. Like, we got it covered. Like, if you do this with us, then you'll be able to boost your, local awareness along with your albums revenue and merch revenue. Like, that's ultimately the goal that we strive to achieve. The demand is definitely there. It's just the supply that's not been following up.
Makes sense. And MAKESTAR, in terms of their global presence, even though your focus is North America and Europe, you guys also have a team that does like Southeast Asia and India all these other countries as well?
Actually, so we have teams focusing on Asia, the big markets in Asia. So we have a separate team focusing on Japan, China, and Taiwan. Southeast Asia, we're trying to build up. But these were the biggest markets so far. So in China and Japan, we actually have legal entities set up and we have actual local offices and people who work there. Because in K-pop, when you say, we're going global, it's rarely the case that they mean North America and Europe. It's mostly Japan and China. Still, even if new groups debut, the first global markets that they have to go and conquer is Japan and China. And then comes North America and Europe.
So you haven't even been at MAKESTAR for a year yet, right?
Not yet, yeah. Maybe not even 6 months. Probably 6 months? I don't know, yeah.
Wow. But you've already hosted some events in North America and Europe?
I did, yeah. So to try out that hypothesis that, there's this specific type of event called Lucky Draws, which is an album-focused event. We've been trying out to see if we can max it out to its full potential. And I've hosted maybe a little short of 10 events so far across 30 different markets. Like, when I say markets, I mean cities, like 30 different cities all across North America and all across Europe. And we're trying to see if we can make this to reach a certain kind of revenue kind of level, because we want to be able to host this weekly to maintain that stability, that stable revenue coming in. And on top of this, we want to be able to try out other event formats to, see which one would actually truly work in the market when it comes to just like that, extraordinary like revenue potential. Like, nothing has, broken our record so far. We're just starting small and we want to, increase it, grow it day by day.
Fascinating. Yeah. Something that I think a lot about in like this world of AI is what are the types of businesses that are not going to be disruptive in some dramatic way,
right.
or where there's going to be a lot of complements. And it seems like the events business, like there's so much opportunity there,
right.
Because that's going to be like one of the last things that's
like
going to be
in person. You get to experience it. Yeah.
And also like the complementary dynamic between where the digital world kind of interacts with the real world.
Right.
Like even in building out K-Bridge, it's awesome that there can be some sort of digital community where I can connect people from all over the world, or just even people in Seoul that don't know about each other.
Yeah.
But then to aggregate them in person and deliver to them some sort of like an experience.
Right.
That's where it seems like a lot of the interesting stuff is happening.
Yeah, definitely. So when I was, considering to move jobs, there was this one seminar that I had from this, I unfortunately do not remember his name, but his insights still are very true. He said that in the age of AI, the only kind of businesses that will survive that age is one of two things. It's either a content provider or a platform provider. So you create content or you either create and maintain the platform to host that content on.
Yes.
And that's why I only pursued opportunities with companies that offered at least one of those two things, but then ended up choosing MAKESTAR because it does both of them. And I do truly believe that by kind of building out my career in somewhere that does both. Although MAKESTAR doesn't really have the AI label, on it right now. I think that the experience that I'm building here and the business kind of cases that I'm building here will definitely help me kind of, in my other career pursuits, which I don't know when or whether it will come.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think Cambridge in that sense, it's also doing both. Like you're creating this amazing content and you're kind of accumulating that.
Yes.
At the same time, you've created this platform where people with such diverse backgrounds have come together, and they've been noticing other people who they might resonate with, and they've been actively connecting with them. And it's just the beginning. And even being in your Kakao chat, it's really exciting. Like, I was too shy to introduce myself, but
you definitely should. You need to.
I will eventually.
Okay.
But seeing you build this is really amazing. Getting to witness it from maybe not day one, but maybe like day 3.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And kind of to your point of you were seeking ecosystems to operate in where there is some sort of meritocratic dynamic is I am surprised by how many people with international backgrounds that are either they maybe identify as Korean internationals like yourself or like Korean diaspora, but they're here working and living in Seoul.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's not that much of a spotlight that's put on some of these like really impressive young people that I find.
Yeah.
At least in an English first context, for somebody like me to digest.
Yeah.
And hosting events like the one that I shared I'm working on in the background is something I'm very excited about. And even in terms of how I would define success in the future is how many maybe new careers or projects or ideas can kind of blossom within the ecosystem because it exists.
Right.
So it's something that I'm very passionate about, and when I find people like you, it gives me more reason to try and make this work. Yeah,
it's amazing what you've been building, and I have this sense that I probably will end up finding someone to build my next KLC with within the Cambridge ecosystem. And like, I just got that sense the first kind of session that I went to. So thank you for that.
Yes.
Yeah, it hasn't come yet, but I can sense it.
Amazing.
It'll be there, yeah.
Amazing. Well, I think we've gone for quite some time.
Really?
Almost an hour and a half now.
Whoa, okay.
Thank you for being willing to do the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I'm hopeful for more collaboration opportunities in the future, and I'm very excited to even just like follow along with all your learnings as like a Korea noob who's still trying to digest and understand.
And also K-pop as well.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So thank you for making the time. I really
thank you for
it.
having me. It's been great.